Hi, everyone. It's Naomi Wolf with DailyClout, and I'm here today with This Week in Congress. Every week we read the actual bills, and as I've said before, what really is clear when you read the bills every week is that much of what's going on out there that you're having your attention directed to is really theater from both political perspectives. And when you actually read the bills, there are these bipartisan bills that are just shooting through, zooming through behind closed doors or under a very, very dangerous form of suspending normal democratic processes called under suspension of rules, which means no one even votes on them. And these bipartisan bills are gigantic giveaways to the powerful interests in this country. It happens week after week. So here at DailyClout, we're reporting on this every week. We're giving it to members in their inboxes. And really, I urge you to not be distracted. If you're being told this week, well, pay attention to the wall. Is it an emergency? Isn't it an emergency? Absolutely nothing that is really substantive political material, millions and billions of dollars, in this case, tens of thousands of acres of pristine land. None of that is included in the debate about the wall. And I'm not saying the debate about the wall isn't important. I'm saying that it serves both parties to direct all your attention over there so that you won't know what they're working together on behind the scenes here, but we are here to tell you. So this is S47. And this passed like about 8 other bills under suspension of rules this week, February 25th. This is bad. It means no one even votes. It's not put to a vote. Suspension of rules is supposed to be used for symbolic gestures that Congress is united on, like naming a highway after Reverend Martin Luther King. It's not supposed to be used for actual hugely impactful legislation. But again and again, we've been seeing hugely impactful bills passed quietly under suspension of rules, and there's always a gigantic giveaway that would not bear scrutiny by people of any political party if people were aware of it. So S47 is one such bill. It's an act to provide for the management of the natural resources of the United States and for other purposes. So again, very typically those very bland, who can argue with that kind of titles that don't really say anything. But if you go to page 2, and we'll embed the bill chem of this, you see where the real news is. And this is under Title I, Public Lands and Forests, Subtitle A, Land Exchanges and Conveyances. So don't get nerded out. It's buried in this boring language, but it's so, so important. And then it shows 17 pristine, beautiful, important areas that are now protected because they're federal land that are going to be handed over in a sneaky way that I'll explain in a minute. I'm going to list these quickly. So anyone who's watching anywhere in the United States, I hope this is also of interest to people outside the United States, but it's definitely your wilderness, your kids' wilderness, everybody. It's Craigsland in Colorado, Arapahoe National Forest, Santa Ana River, Wash Plan Udall Park, Custer County Airport, Pasquayaqui Tribe, La Paz County, Lake Bistineau, Lake Fannin, Henry's Lake Wilderness in Idaho, the Ukpeakvik Inupiat Corporation, City of Hyde Park, Utah, Waub County, Black Mountain Range, Cottonwood Land Exchange, and Embry-Riddle Tri-City Land Exchange. So something you should notice about page 2 is that I just read you a bunch of places, and you probably don't know exactly where they are, and neither do I, because these bills are so sneaky. They bury the state and the county deeper in the bill, and hope you won't get past page 2. But we got past page 2, so what do you find? Oh, there's more. 1819, Goblin Valley State Park, Jurassic National Monument. And institutional trust lands, administration land. So there's lots and lots. We're getting to 20, 21, 22 land exchanges. Lower Farmington River and Salmon Brook, Wood, Pawcatuck Watershed, Nashua Wild and Scenic Rivers, Massachusetts, and New Hampshire. So buried in these first 4 pages, they hope you won't notice, are 22 land exchanges. Why does that matter? Why is Naomi upset about land exchanges? Well, let me show you what this very sneakily does. Everyone knows that actually giving away our federal lands to mining interests or to hotels or to development of second homes is not popular. It's popular among some hunters and fishermen who tend to vote Republican to have access to these lands. And it's popular among Sierra Club types who tend to vote Democratic to not give hunters and fishermen access. And sometimes there are little scuffles over like snowshoeing or snowboarding or, snow vehicles. But actually handing over these beautiful wilderness areas that have been part of our nation's heritage since Teddy Roosevelt, that's not popular. It's not politically popular. But there's in every administration huge pressure on legislators to hand them over because they're so valuable. So what these exchanges do is nominally the federal government managing these wilderness areas has the right to say, for instance, in Columbia County, where we have a place that we go to, a cottage, one of the local landowners traded an easement on his property so people could get to Taconic State Park, and in exchange, the state of New York gave him some wilderness. It's a trade. And of course, in managing federal lands, sometimes that's a good idea. But that provision of sometimes you need to trade like for like has been manipulated in the sneakiest way in this bill so that the federal government is giving away tens of thousands of pristine acres of sensitive wilderness. And in exchange saying to counties and to hotels and to mining interests, well, give me a little strip of roadway on your land. And then they've created this accounting loophole that says even if the value is not equal, we'll make it equal so we can trade like for like. And then you, private hotel interests in Colorado, when you give us this little land to use as roadway, we'll give you 347 acres of pristine wilderness, and we'll just call it 50-50. We'll just call it quits. That's what has happened in this bill, which is hundreds of pages long. So let me walk you through some of it. And now I really hope you'll take notes and go on social media and tell your friends, state by state, because this is our heritage that's being ripped from our hands. Crags Land Exchange, Colorado. So the idea is it's to promote enhanced public outdoor recreation. Well, with whom? They're going to transact with BHI, which means Broadmoor Hotel, Inc., a Colorado corporation. What does that mean? That Colorado corporation gets 83 acres of land within the Pike National Forest in El Paso County, Colorado, along with a non-exclusive perpetual easement to BHI to and from such land on a Forest Service road. So what does that mean? That means that this corporation, which owns a resort, right, gets to use Forest Service road, a Forest Service road that our tax dollars pay for forever to get to what is now an 83-acre parcel of land in the middle of pristine wilderness. And who gets to go there? Their guests. That's what this is about. And the non-federal land, what are they trading? Oh, they're trading an easement in exchange, and that's 320 acres of land within the Pike National Forest. And in exchange, they're going to do a voluntary donation to the United States of an easement, and then they get all that land. And in general, if BHI offers to convey to the secretary all right, title, and interest in and to the non-federal land, the secretary will accept the offer and simultaneously convey to BHI the federal land. So it's like, here, take this shitty parcel that I bought for this purpose. Did I say that? I'm sorry. Take this really useless inexpensive parcel that I bought for this purpose, this big hotel corporation for rich people on vacation in Colorado, and I'll just hand it to you, Secretary of the Interior. You hand me these pristine 98 acres in the middle of a national forest and a Forest Service road from my hotel to that pristine acreage, and I'll make sure that my guests get to go there alone forever, and anyone else in the state of Colorado who's used to camping there, hunting there, fishing there, has taken their children there since Teddy Roosevelt created this system in the 1920s. Too bad, or 19-teens, too bad. This corporation, this hotel, now owns this land, and by fudged accounting, the federal government calls it quits. And that's forever. This hotel, meaning if the hotel sells itself to a multinational corporation, to China, to France, right? To some gigantic Marriott, right? Too bad, because forever the heirs of that Marriott corporation get to have these beautiful, pristine acres forever, and the access road to them from the hotel. All right. And so that's how that's sneakily done. And it actually says the values of the federal land and the non-federal land parcels exchanged shall be equal, or if they are not equal, shall be equalized as follows. And here's where you get the tricky math. We'll just say they're equal. And not only that, if they're not equal, BHI gets a tax deduction, right? So either way, BHI wins. They get your land and they win a tax deduction, and they get it cheap. Special use permit. The appraised value of the federal land shall not reflect any increase or diminution in value due to the special use permit existing on the date of enactment of this act to BHI on the parcel and the improvements thereunder. That means if this resort gets this pristine parcel of land, builds a road, suddenly it's worth a lot more. Well, it's worth a huge amount because it wasn't worth anything because it was pristine, protected national land. They don't have to report that on their tax returns. They just get that value. So it's stunning, sneaky accounting. And it's going to be permanently withdrawn from all forms of appropriation and disposal under the Public Lands Act. That means that this multinational corporation gets this stuff forever. No one can ever revoke it, forever and ever and ever. That's capitalism. And there goes your chunk of almost 100 acres of pristine Colorado forest. Jordan Allen says, let's talk about Warren. Okay, there are lots of compliments. Thank you. We'll just skip that. And then someone, Daisy351 says, no taxes. Exactly right. No taxes on they're not even purchasing. They're just saying, here, take these stinky acres out here that are worth very little. Give me that precious parcelage. And, let's just not even report that to Uncle Sam, the value that I now have as a corporation. Page 16. Arapaho National Forest Boundary Adjustment. So in Arapaho National Forest in the state of Colorado, 92.95 acres called the Wedge that have been protected are now going to be unprotected by moving the boundaries in 2019 back to the boundaries in existence on January 1st, 1965. So there's a loss of so many acres because they just said, well, we'll go back to that boundary that's earlier. Notwithstanding, the owners of any non-federal lands still get to drive their cars in and out. So it basically shrinks the size of the Arapaho National Forest in Colorado by just saying, let's pretend it's 1965. And now all that land is open to development. Santa Ana River, Wash Plan Land Exchange, same thing. This federal exchange parcel means about 90 acres of federal land in the Santa Ana River. And they're so sneaky because you really have to dig to find out where that is, but that's got to be California. And in exchange, there's about 59 acres owned by LA's Conservation District. And in exchange, the federal government gets 310 acres from LA, but then they convey to the Conservation District all the right, title, and interest in the federal land. And what that means is LA can do whatever LA wants. Nominally, it's for water management, but practically, the Conservation District can hand this over to developers. And again, the United States government didn't make a single penny from this highly, highly valuable exchange in the Santa Ana River, which is a precious, precious watershed. Udall Park Land Exchange, and this is page 23. So that's 172.8-acre parcel of city land, and who gets it? It's Tucson, Arizona, gets that gigantic parcel, and the secretary shall convey to the city of Tucson without consideration the reversionary interests of the United States in and to the non-federal land, and as soon as practicable after the date of the enactment of the act, the exact legal descriptions of the non-federal land shall be determined in a manner satisfactory to the secretary. Meaning, this gives the Secretary of the Interior a blank check to say, we want to hand over federal and non-federal land, a multi-$100 parcel to the city of Tucson, meaning to developers in Tucson. We will call it whatever we want, right? And then there's more of a blank check. The secretary gets to consider the conditions to the conveyance as he deems appropriate to protect the interests of the United States. Well, who in the United States? If he's thinking about the interests of the developers of Tucson, they just got nearly 180 acres of pristine land for no money at all. And let's see, the TGAL11 says, hi, Naomi. Hi, TGAL11. I follow you on Twitter, and I'm wondering if Mike Hudema has ever responded to you regarding Green New Deal. And that's Teresa G in Canada. Thank you, Teresa. Sadly, not yet. I wish he would. I really admire his work. Oh, and Roscoe Rossi says, Naomi, ADD, please sum up concept, and I'll pay attention from there. I respect that. I have ADD. It's a bit of a tug of war because in sound bites, what I can say is this bill sneakily hands over hundreds and hundreds of acres of pristine land, federal land, wilderness, to developers, mining interests, and hotels, and also steals it especially from Native American reservations. But we also have a mission at DailyClout of, if not reading the bill word for word, because it's gigantic, at least really bullet pointing it for real. So I'll headline from time to time. You can have me on in the background if too much information is overwhelming, but I really do need to tell you some key places this is happening to be true to our mission. Thank you for bringing that up. Custer County Airport conveyance. So that's another hundreds of acres in Texas. Pascua Yaqui tribe land conveyance. Again, I said earlier that a lot of these are aimed at reservations and native lands. So here targeted on page 30 is the Pascua Yaqui tribe of Arizona. A lot of Arizonan theft here, Arizona, Colorado, and Texas, 39.65 acres. And what do they get to do? They get to have the, this is going to blow your mind, on page 33, the tribe may not conduct gaming activities. So their traditional way of making money, no, they've lost the right to do this on their own land, on page 33, either as a matter of claimed inherent authority or under the authority of any federal law. And I have a big exclamation point here because that's, we herded these native people onto these mostly horrible lands that are not very good for farming and gave them kind of two ways of making money, and one of them is gambling. So this strips that from them and basically says they can keep their water, but the federal government is going to hold that land. It's going to take it into trust by the United States for the benefit of the tribe. All that land, all of its resources, all of its scenic beauty, the right to develop it, it looks like. The tribe can no longer run gaming on that land. They still have access to their water, but the United States government just took it back from the native people who had been herded onto that reservation in the first place. This is La Paz County, Arizona, and I'll skip ahead in honor of all of our friends out there who have ADD, as do I. Lake Bistineau, this will blow your mind. That is 229 acres. And Lake Bistineau is in Louisiana. How did they get that sneaky thing done? On page 39, they moved back to the original survey, which was done in 1842. And so what that did was that it left everything that had been expanded around Lake Bistineau in Louisiana since 1842, now it is open to development. Lake Fannin land conveyance on page 41, that's 2,025 acres in Texas of national forest system. Henry's Lake in Idaho. And notice a lot of these states are places that mineral interests are looking at, energy interests are looking at. Oil, of course, is in Texas. And here it grants Fall River Electric in Ashna, Idaho, the right to operate a right-of-way on what had been pristine, protected wilderness. Here on page 45, a Ukpeagvik Inupiat Corporation gets some gas fields on our sacred and fragile public lands. There's a conveyance to the city of Hyde Park, Utah of 80 acres. So you see what's going on here. I'll just summarize and we'll embed the bill so you can see it for yourself. But all over Arizona, all over Colorado, all over Idaho, all over Utah, all over Texas so far, also Massachusetts and New Hampshire, the federal government has stolen back from our protected lands that have been part of our national heritage since Teddy Roosevelt, thousands and thousands, tens of thousands, totally hundreds of thousands of acres of protected national land, and has basically handed it over to hotels, mining interests, electrical interests, gas and oil interests, and stolen it back from Native Americans also. So that is what happened this week, S47. It's shocking. A bunch of other stuff was also passed under suspension of rules, but they're mostly minor bills, like giving $5 million to veterans to learn STEM science and technology, or, funding a few million for scholarships for entrepreneurship and innovation. And what you find is this pattern where week after week, there's like one gigantic act of theft or act of sneaking something in that the American people would not be okay with, usually under suspension of rules. And it's kind of decorated with all of these totally anodyne, who would ever begrudge the veterans the right to be funded if they want to learn STEM technologies and science. And what I want to share with you to wrap up, and then I'll take your questions, and I can't say it enough, is don't be fooled by the theater. Whatever the news outlets who are not reading these bills, I have to say, whatever they're telling you to pay attention to this week, the border wall, dreamers, gay rights around the world, the Mueller report, it's all theater for the most part, because who passed this, who okayed this? Both parties, the Democrats and the Republicans were okay with this going through under suspension of rules. So let's see. Daisy 351 says, oh, thank you, Roscoe Rossi. You say you're following now. I really appreciate your giving me that feedback. I struggle with that as well. And it's good to know that I'm doing it right now for those of us who need to focus a little harder. How do they just take the land? Well, they take it by calling it something else. They call it an exchange. That's how they take the land. It's a lot like having a good accountant that basically lets you steal stuff, but you're rich enough to pay top dollar to a really good accountant. So you get to keep all the stuff and call it legal. And the other way they do it is by passing this under suspension of rules, which means you didn't hear about it because they didn't vote on it. They just passed it under suspension of rules. That's a way to avoid scrutiny, avoid debate. Human Restoration Project says, great question, Roscoe. Answer, they supposedly can't, but we just let them do whatever we want. Maddening. Again, to be really nerdy about that, this under suspension of the rules trick or loophole lets them pass things without telling you. And it's the biggest unreported story in America, in my view. And we're telling you, but it's an absolute scandal. So, if you want to do something about it, you email your representative, use BillCam for this. We'll embed the BillCam. And that's on our site, dailyclout.io. And you tell your representative, stop passing things under suspension of rules. Let's get rid of under suspension of rules. It's being used for tyranny. Danny Anson says, pleasure to see you again. Thank you. 95% error says, manifest destiny. Isn't that nice? And Roscoe Rossi says, can you do live stream where we submit appropriate, of course, political questions to you? Well, this site I trust is live stream, so give me the questions, but also you can always submit them on DailyClout by Naomi at dailyclout.io, and I will always respond. It helps us if you become members of DailyClout. It's $3.99 a month. We've made it as affordable as possible, but it helps me pay our researchers, pay our tech people, pay our videographers, pay our hosting and data, which costs money. So yes, Aline Sirocco says, yep. 95% error says, thank you, Naomi. Thank you for watching. Stephen Perry says, okay, but S47 hasn't passed, right? Just introduced. Well, that's a good question. It's been introduced under suspension of rules, which means they really don't have to do anything to pass it. They just have to move it along. So I'll keep reporting on that. But if we don't stop it, it will pass because there's no process once it's introduced under suspension of rules. Aline Sirocco says, smart lady, thank you. And Roscoe Rossi says, I'm becoming a member for sure. I'm really grateful. Thank you so much. And our wonderful team who report and work so hard will be really grateful too. Let me make sure I've answered everyone's question. Sunday awesomeness, thanks to you. Daisy, you're so nice. Roscoe Rossi says, vote for Elizabeth Warren, donate to her. We're nonpartisan, so I'm excited to see so many people throwing their hats in the ring. That's as it should be. But I can't endorse anybody. But I'll keep reporting on everybody. Roscoe Rossi says, Bernie is carnival circus designed to split up Warren tribe so corporate Camelot takes the cake. The interesting point. Jordan Allen says, Warren has no chance. She supports Israel's war against Palestinians. No leftist will back a woman like Warren. Enjoy the bubble you're living in. Interesting observation. Let me encourage everyone to really use a civil tone. Even when we're disagreeing very strongly, we can always disagree on the content. And I really want to make all my platforms a place where people from all perspectives can really have civil debate, strong debate, but not personal attacks. Let's see what we've got further down. And Alina Sirocco says, I'm going to become a member too. To which I am saying, Aline, thank you. I'm so grateful. And she says, it's funny that people think they can vote their way out of this. Laugh out loud. Well, that's what we exist for at DailyClout, to give you the power to not let anyone get away with anything when they're representing you unless you okay it. It's about you driving your democracy. And oh dear, Colleen Casey says, I've tried to become a member a few times. For some reason, it didn't work. We did respond to this. Thank you. I'll give it a try again. Much respect for the work you do and the team at DailyClout. Thank you, Colleen. And I know we've connected before. I'm so sorry. Sometimes you have to, I'm sorry to say this, but sometimes you have to clear your cookies or check your spam folder when you're trying to become a member because of spam. But any problem you have, just email me, Naomi at dailyclout.io. It's my personal email. I will read it. I will get it to our lovely webmaster, Erica Goldman, and she will get you in. And Danny Anson says 30% of Palestinians are Christians, to which I would say yes. And even if they were Muslims or Jews, in my view, everyone on both sides of the divide needs to be treated according to international law and human rights. Colleen Casey says, thanks, I will do that. Bless you all. That is wonderful. It's great news for our team. Do you have any other questions? I should note that other important things that happen in Congress this week, just to kind of round out my reporting, there was a resolution to say it's not an emergency about the border wall. It's like a one-paragraph resolution that was introduced as a real bill. It wasn't passed under suspension of rules. I believe Gerald Nadler introduced it, and it just literally says it's not an emergency. Let's terminate the state of emergency. And of course, the state of emergency does raise very important questions about democracy because, as I wrote in The End of America, any closing democracy, the step 10 to closing a democracy is suspending the rule of law. And inevitably, the way weakening democracies turn into fascist states or totalitarian states is elected officials will just suspend the rule of law. They'll say, there's an emergency. It's always an emergency. In the last 10 or 15 years, well, since 9/11, it's been, oh gosh, 17, 18, 19 years, it's been the emergency was terrorism. People are a little jaded about that because so many of those stories turned out to be hyped or inflated, not that terrorism doesn't exist. So now people are casting about for other entities to demonize. President Trump, being nonpartisan, his emergency is people flooding in to, cross the border. And he's invoking a state of emergency to suspend due process. Being nonpartisan, in my view, it's bad whenever it's done. Abraham Lincoln suspended due process and declared a state of emergency and suspended habeas corpus. Didn't make it right. The emergency was the Civil War. It's never right. It's always easier to suspend democracy if you're a leader, but too bad. Don't do it. Okay, interesting. Human Restoration says, yes, can you go up a bit about my constitutional question? Oh, so many good questions. Let me find your constitutional question. Okay, Aline says a mass strike would do more than voting in rigged elections. I do talk in Give Me Liberty about how important protest is and how important it is to know how to protest effectively. And stopping business as usual has been effective. But to survive that, and I say this as someone who's been arrested in a peaceful protest by the NYPD, you really have to demilitarize the police and make sure that no one's being tortured. Danny Anson says, amen, girl, to Aline. Okay, so Colleen says, I'm not saying to ignore our system and voting as a civic duty, yet I also think we should create a society around the system on a local level, communities, and local mobilization is so important. Danny Anson says, in March 1970, Congress created the Commission on Population Growth and the American Future, which completed its work in March 1972. That's true. I'd like to know more about your point there, Danny. Stephen Perry said, you've mentioned getting 100 signatures from community members as a way to have clout with representatives. Is there a template for such a thing available on your site or elsewhere? It's a good idea. It's a great idea. Stephen, thank you. This is why I'm asking you with so much embarrassment, because it doesn't come easily to me, for people to sign up as members on DailyClout. We are doing a new build with our developers, Arc Interactive, and that costs about $15,000. And in that build, there will be templates where you can validate who you are, because your elected official counts your voice on a petition a lot more if you vote and if you're a constituent. And also a template that's shareable. So for any issue, you and everyone on this thread, if you don't like S47, we'll have a template on DailyClout where you can sign up, and I'll be able to say to the people who introduce this, 500 people on DailyClout don't like this or do like it, or 300 like it and 600 don't like it, and that will make your voices much more impactful. And let me just say, Stephen, I was in a hearing last week for the Strand Bookstore with Landmarks Commission here in New York. They were voting on it, and I was reporting. And the poor Strand, this beautiful bookstore, they put together 6,000 signatures on paper of people who were supporting them by opposing burdensome landmarking. And I watched them give this to the people on the commission, and the people on the commission, including their lawyer, said, we're not going to count these effectively because who knows if they're duplicates or they came in too late, or there's only one form you can use on the Landmarks Commission to register your opinions. So we have to put an end to that. That's how people ignore the will of the people. That's how our elected officials ignore the will of the people. Okay, so let's see. Voting is used by the establishment, says Aline, to gauge how many people are still indoctrinated and how many still consent. There, I respectfully disagree with you. I think as long as we still have a vestige of a democracy, we do need to vote. I used to be a political consultant for Al Gore, and I learned a lot. And what I learned was even a very few votes can make a big difference, but they have to be combined with verification and public scrutiny, as we saw. Let's see. Danny Jensen said, Congress created the Commission on Population, then ignored the conclusion. That's interesting. Well, population is one of those things that it's very, very tricky to engage with because of the very dark and evil history of eugenics, controlling populations through saying, you know, let's sterilize African Americans, or some people are, you know, let's have only white healthy people, and disabled people or people of color, you know, let's sterilize them or do away with them. So I'll take a look at that, but I'm not surprised that they found out what should happen and then went, let's see. Oh, Stephen Perry says, sweet, you guys are doing the best work. It's like Citizen Empowerment 101. That is the goal. That is what we're passionate about, and we can't do it without you. You know, you're the reason we're doing it, and your voices make it so valuable. Oh, Danny says, they told us in school in the 70s to have a better future for our kids, we should have less of them. Now they demand we be replaced. That's interesting. I do remember that. I remember I'm the same age as you, and I went to school in the 70s, and we were told, have 2 kids, don't have more, for environmental reasons. And it's a reasonable message. It is. Oh, Mr. YR 2011 says, controversy with de Blasio and developers in New York City is not a new issue. You're so right. Sadly, that's true. Thank you for that info about voting. You're welcome, 95% air. And Danny, you bring up so many good points, all of you. Danny says, and this is the subject for a whole other discussion we should have because it's a rich one, they promoted abortion for my generation in 73. That is true. In that era, abortion, I mean, that's, let's save a nice long hour at another time to discuss an abortion bill like the New York Reproductive Health Bill I just read, and talk about messaging around abortion, because it's a very sensitive subject. But I can't disagree with you that wherever you stand on abortion, and I'm pro-choice, we were given the message from mainstream media and even politicians and unfortunately women's groups that in the 70s, you know, abortion was a way to manage your reproductive life, like birth control. Let's see. Oh, here's the constitutional question from Human Restoration Project. Thank you for repeating it. Repeat, it's my understanding that the federal government cannot own land according to the Constitution. Should we focus here about the issue you're talking about today? The land is not theirs. So that is a great question and a great point, Human Restoration Project. And you're doing my favorite thing of delving into what is democracy, what is this thing that belongs to us, let's use it, so they can't pretend we're not allowed to. You are right, but in S-47, the federal government is not owning the land. The federal government holds the land in trust in the Wilderness Act in 1927. For us, we own the land effectively. However, it's acting as a broker, as a middleman. And it's saying, here, hotel guy, let me just facilitate this exchange. You know, it's like Bitcoin almost, or it's like other forms of exchange that evade, you know, scrutiny and taxes by creating an exchange that no one sees, in which the value that the federal government gets isn't the federal government's, right? It's not like, oh, they flat out sold these parcels and then it goes back into the treasury, right? That would benefit us, the taxpayers. No, the way, and this is why there's a bipartisan bill, no one's objected to it. Even the Green New Deal people are not objecting to it, right? You've heard crickets about this from AOC or from Nancy Pelosi. Why is that? Because the way these people who are moving this along get paid is by those rich people, those electrical interests, those mining interests, those, what else is there, developers, funding their next campaign. That's how they get paid. Their friends will remember this. Their friends will remember the 100 acres of beautiful woodland in Colorado that is now the backyard of this resort, and they didn't pay a dime for it, right? It was an exchange. They exchanged something of equal value, and so the people who move this along get paid. We don't get the value, but our leaders in Congress, who didn't even bother to tell us about it because we would scream and yell wherever we are on the political spectrum, they get the value. Nancy Pelosi gets the value. The Republican team gets the value. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez gets the value because these reelection campaigns are expensive, and these are now their best friends to write the checks the next time around. So that's how that works. I don't mean to bum you out. Oh, that's interesting. Mr. Year 2001 says the only way to ensure oversight is with independent third-party participation that can't be bought. I agree with that. And actually, if you mean third party, like I think as many parties as want to run, there shouldn't be barriers. But I've actually thought the United States elections should be overseen by Jimmy Carter's group that does voting scrutiny. 5G. I'm going to get to that. I promise, Roscoe Rossi. I swear to you, we've done 3 5G videos. It's one of our top issues, a grassroots issue. And I promise next week I will do a full-scale update on that. And in the meantime, go to DailyClout.io and you can see the stuff, the work we've already done on 5G. They have loopholes for everything. It must end, says Human Restoration Project. That's a perfect note to end on. Citizen audits, love that, Allison Murphy. Yes, absolutely. And that's an idea I also want to move forward. I love the idea of you having a right to opt in to register your vote in a third-party digital platform that's scrutinized by everybody. And that's up to you. You can keep it secret or you can keep it public. The secret vote actually is a pretty recent historical innovation. And it just lets people hack the vote over and over and over and over. And my view is if you want to choose to make your vote public and register it by a third party, and maybe that only gets opened up if there's a dispute over the vote or if it's within a narrow margin, we should have that opportunity. And again, that's something DailyClout can build if we continue to grow. Citizen oversight, absolutely. Citizen oversight, says Mr. Year 2011, would be one implementation of third-party. Totally agree. On this happy note, right? Don't you feel empowered? I feel empowered. We're not alone. We're not complaining. We're not on YouTube just yelling at people. We're actually getting democracy done. So these are some fantastic ideas. We've shown a light on, I think, a very bad bill from a nonpartisan point of view. Human Restoration Project says this was great. Many thanks, Naomi. And it seems like this is a good time to have these live streams. So Stephen Perry says, thank you. Thank you all. And again, I have to be shameless and ask for help. Please subscribe to the YouTube channel. Please become members of DailyClout.io. $3.99 a month. It helps us keep it free for schools and libraries. Please email me what you want to see us talk about. Put it on the agenda. Thank you for all the work you do for us, Naomi, says Allison Murphy. I do it for all of us. We do it together. We're all in this together, and the power of all of us is really unstoppable. So that's me. I'm going to see you next Sunday at 6 p.m. East Coast time. It seems like that's a good time for all of you. And in the meantime, if there's additional material, we'll put it up on the blog. We'll embed the bill. And I say a huge thank you to all of you, Naomi Wolf and DailyClout. And this is S47.